Oh, am I live? Yes, I am. Good morning, everybody. Glad to see you here this morning. And it is February 17th, 2020. Can't believe it. And this is the regular board meeting for the Tampa Bay Water. And our first order of business will to do the Pledge of Allegiance, led by my Vice Chair, Commissioner Eggers.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hey, thank you very much. And we'll move right into public comment. We have two signed up to speak. Mark Clutho will be the first speaker and have 3 minutes. Tampa Bay Water Board Directors welcomes comments from the public about any issue or concern. Opinions provide valuable input to the board members. However, we request that public comments be directed to issues not directed personally against any board member or staff member. This provides mutual respect between the board members and the public. And you will have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Mark Clutho, Largo. Respect is earned. You don't automatically get respect. I don't know when you'll learn that. You just don't get it. Here we have energy management program. Wasn't it the last meeting? I had to go in the media room and turn off the lights. They're on again. And you're talking about energy management program? And you're going to talk about respect? Are you kidding me? What kind of fools are you? When I was a little kid, my father taught me. Reach up and turn off the lights. Respect. Look at the slime off of the faucet. Respect. All wearing coats. Yeah, we're in trouble. Look at this. UN report warns that humans are threatening their own futures by accelerating the extinction of over 1 million species. Down there in Australia, they say 1 billion animals have died because of the fires. Scientists, we just had the warmest decade ever. And this headline, 64.9 degrees, balmy Antarctica. The highest temperature on record down there. Yeah. And so what do? You have the lights burning in there. It's just the tip of the iceberg. You people are pariahs. Respect, never. You need to be jailed. It's malfeasance. That is the word. Ignoring science. Yeah. Just absolutely disgusting.
Thank you. Thank you. 3 minutes is up. David Ballard Geddes, Jr. is our next speaker.
Good morning. David Ballard Geddes, Jr. I live on Georgia Avenue in Palm Harbor. Individual independence, inalienable rights, indivisible, and justice for all despotic water jurisdictions thereof, as abridged under the 14th Amendment. But first, as aggregate, let's fortnight this Constitution and use this as a medium. And under this act of sedition, we the people shall rebelliously go about and legislate as we please, pillaging, plundering, polluting, laying waste of the water supply, using political dissension as a means to assuage and give rise to an underlying, overarching, when in the course of human events, reasonable, beneficial form of backbiting taxation. Unjustifiably, we shall impose direct taxation, poll taxing, and impugn the civilian population as we the people, as enumerated from Article 1, Section 2, in support of our posterity, as qualification requisite of Hamilton's first Constitution, understand to see fit to self-appoint our own self-righteousness in forming a tyrannical government over water, posturing ourselves in the hindsight of a society that has been led perilously into a lack of vision concerning simple physics and geometry, laying to bear those we are pretending to govern, then shape-shifting, choosing to reconstitute ourselves under statute 373.715. So as declared under the candid nature of this Constitution, let's plunder and capture the resources of this land and water in Article 1, Section 8. After all, Federalist Paper number 79 clearly states, in order to control another man's will, one must first control man's subsistence. So I ask, while counterfeiting this constitutional act of abomination and causing a catastrophic biblical act of blasphemy, is the leadership in any of the stakeholdings to this government expecting their transgressions not to be ostracized? Thank you.
Thank you very much. That does conclude the public comment. Is there anyone else wishing to speak? Okay, seeing none. I will now entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll move. Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Like sign opposed, show that pass. And we will now move to the regular agenda, and I'll turn it over to our CEO.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning, board members. I have this in the next presentation, if I may. Just starting off with an update from the Executive Committee meeting. We have been working as the board requested to find some or select some dates where board members are available for some board workshops, and we have been able to find 2 dates. One is on March 25th. And the second is on April 29th. And we are recommending that we go ahead and schedule those dates. I think beginning at 9 o'clock based on board availability would be the best time to start. And we will be working with the facilitators and you to determine the location. But if you'll go, I think those dates should be on your calendar. So we're planning on moving forward with the advertisement for those 2 dates within it.
Okay, any questions? Is everybody in agreement on the dates? Took a while, but we're all very busy. So thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. And if I may, on G2, I have a presentation going over the agency's accomplishments for 2019 and looking forward to the year 2020, items that will be coming before the board. And first looking back at 2019, some of the highlights include, of course, the agency achieving its mandate, as we always do, to deliver high-quality drinking water to member governments 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and 365 days per year. We also moved forward with securing contractors for the master water supply update, the 3 projects that will need to be vetted moving forward. We implemented the region's first demand management program to save up to 11 million gallons a day, hopefully by 2030, and we secured a third-party administrator for the program. The board approved the short-term plan to meet the growing water demands in South Central Hillsborough County. And we completed the desktop analysis for the water quality and treatment options to enhance the regional drinking water. This will serve as a basis for the work moving forward for pilot testing and for additional studies. We continued with our commitment to maintain our system. We completed 8 capital and renewal and replacement projects to maintain our infrastructure. We maintained an affordable rate for water we charge at $255.9 per 1,000 gallons. In 2019 was the 8th year that we were at that rate, and the board did approve the 2020 budget last year, marking the 9th year at that same rate. The agency continued to participate in leading-edge technology and research, working with the Water Research Foundation. The agency's website was revised to ensure adherence to accessibility guidelines and to openly and transparently provide information to the public and to the members. We continued our investment in the Tampa Bay community through the Source Water Protection Mini Grant Program and the Pasco County School Crossbar Education Center Program and our partnership with the Glacier Children's Museum. Looking forward to 2020, during the first quarter, we anticipate moving forward with the work on the South Central Hillsborough Booster Station, as well as working with Hillsborough County on a memorandum of understanding for a potential new point of connection for a pipeline. That will be discussed later on the agenda. Additionally, the agency is working to meet the certification requirements under the American Water Infrastructure Act as reported in the consent item. The agency fiscal 2019 audit of financial statements will be presented later on in the meeting today. In the second quarter, the board will be asked to consider the fiscal year 21 budget. We also anticipate the contracts for the second phase of the regional water quality study to come to the board in June. Implementation of the demand management program will continue. The completion of the agency's pay and class study and the results of the management and performance audit will be presented, and these updates will be given to the board in the April and June timeframe. In the third quarter, we will bring an important permit renewal for consideration for it's a well fill permit, a consolidated permit for 90 million gallons per day. Last year, half the water we delivered came from this permit, and it's up for renewal. Mr. Warren Hogg will be making a presentation under item J1 later in the meeting. And in the fourth quarter, staff will again be presenting the annual demand forecast updates to the board to ensure that we are planning accurately for future water demands. As you know, we receive Exhibit K from each of the member governments during the first part of the year, and then we take that information and we compare that to our modeling. We talk to the member governments and ask questions, and we have questions, and then of course work to reconcile any differences, and then we present that to the board. And we will use, along with the demand management program, to see how that's moving forward so we can understand when it's going to be the best time to bring the next water supply project forward. In addition, at the member government's request, we are exploring the possibility or the viability of doing a regional chlorine maintenance program. And finally, some things we're working on for the board. Obviously, the agency has some upcoming important decisions involving future large projects, including choosing the next master water plan project, water quality improvements, capital improvement plan, and renewal and replacement. These involve large capital expenditures, and so what we're doing to make sure that we provide the board with as much information as we can to help to facilitate these decisions and to understand how any additional debt could be integrated within the existing debt service structure. So to better work through this, we'll be working with a consultant to develop a rate model that we can use, that we'll be able to run various scenarios that the board may be contemplating. And so we can make some predictions on where these would take our finances in the future. And then finally, reclaimed water credit evaluations. We will continue to work with member governments in ways to value reclaimed water and reclaimed credits. On January 24th, we had a meeting with the utility directors, and there was a lot of good discussion about this topic and varying ideas. A summary of that meeting was sent out to the board last week, and staff recommends the board discuss this topic with a rate consultant at one of its facilitated workshops with other member government staff as well. Tampa Water will need to understand or these credit values by the end of December of 2022 in order, because that is when we're scheduled to bring the conclusion of the vetted master water plan projects to the board, and obviously that credit evaluation is a cost component of the SHARP project. So those are the items that I plan to present today. These schedules, could change, and if they do, I'll keep the board informed. And as you know, there'll be other items coming forward, but I wanted to just cover those with you this morning, and I appreciate the opportunity, and we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Does anyone have any questions? I don't see any questions. It was a good report, good year in review. So thank you very much. And was that passed out to us?
It was emailed last week, I believe.
Okay. I'm not sure I received that, but
Okay.
So we'll just check on that. And
Yes, ma'am.
try and get me another copy. Okay, thank you. And then the legislative update.
Yes, ma'am, and I think we're scheduled to have Mr. Peter Dunbar and Matthew Blair on the phone. Are those gentlemen with us this morning?
Matt, Pete, you on the phone? Hello?
Yes, we're here.
Okay.
Great.
Yes, Madam Chair, we're here.
Little delay, but glad you're here. Okay, so we'll turn it over to you, and you can give us a legislative update.
It's Pete Dunbar, and let me give you just a general overview of the session and then work into specifics. We hit the midpoint last Wednesday, so the session is now more than halfway done. Subcommittees in the House concluded their work last week. Full committees in both bodies will continue to meet for a couple of more weeks. I believe that Kathleen is distributing the weekly written report. The most recent one went out, I believe, this morning. We've been monitoring about 30 different pieces of legislation, but at the midpoint, we have about 5 operational items that the staff may be impacted by that are still viable. And there are 2 items relating to water legislation that also remain viable and likely to pass in some form. The one, though, that is probably most relevant, we have previously briefed the board on, and that is the reuse legislation of reclaimed water. The Senate bill is 1656. It's sponsored by Representative Albritton. Its House companion is Representative Maygard, and it is House Bill 715. Both bills moving along. Actually, the Senate bill has a hearing this afternoon. It will be amended. Well, there's an amendment pending, and I think will be adopted does not deal with things that would directly affect Tampa Bay Water or its member governments. It's primarily dealing with incentives for private developers on how we deal with reclaimed water and funding grants that may go along with it. A general overview of the legislation does the following. It is first, and probably most important, both Matt and I have met with the leadership even before the legislation surfaced. When it was filed, it does not do anything that jeopardizes the interlocal agreement, and through the sequence of changes that have occurred, none of those have changed it either. Technical consideration, the staff had a suggestion that's also been built in dealing with how actual permitting will occur. Relevant is that in 2026, the reclaimed water has to be used with some rare exceptions coming out of a either private or governmental wastewater treatment facility. Also significant is that there is a 2-year delay while the Department of Environmental Protection goes through a rulemaking process. Those rules will not be approved as a standard APA process, and instead will have to come back to the legislature and be readopted by the legislature in that context. This piece of legislation is the top priority, or one of the top priorities, for the president-designate. I think both Matt and I are quite confident that it's going to pass. With that, I'd be glad to answer some specific questions, and if there are none, then I'd like to turn it over to Matt Blair and let him talk a little bit about the appropriations request, because the budgets did cross last week, which puts us sort of in the final wrap-up stage. That has to be concluded here in the next couple of weeks in order to reach a timely shutdown on the process. So, Madam Chairman, that's kind of where we are from the legislative perspective.
Okay, let me just see if there are any questions.
Not right now.
You see? I just wanted to clarify, the bill passes. Does that mean all the rulemaking authority for reclaimed water will be done by DEP?
Yes, and under the legislation, DEP is mandated to bring in task forces to work with them. There is a 2-year process that is on the horizon if the bill passes and the rulemaking process begins. I think without question, those rules, to the extent they are promulgated, will come back to the legislature during Senator Simpson's second year as Senate President.
Okay, so anything involving reclaim will not be under Tampa Bay Water, it would be under DEP?
No, actually, if you look at the legislation, they virtually describe Tampa Bay Water in generic sense. The projects we already have in the master planning process, that's what's contemplated. Excuse me. Also in the longer-term planning process on how reclaimed water will be used on a regional basis, also mentioned specifically in the legislation, so that to the extent that the agency and its member governments want to move forward, I don't think there's anything that would deter that from occurring. Now, the mandate of how the individual wastewater treatment facilities will have to move to full use of their recycled water is the heart of what the rulemaking will deal with. The focus to make it or have it become a potable source actually in the whereas clauses basically described in generic terms what has been on the table for both TAP and SHARP.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, you can keep going.
Okay, Matt, you want to talk a little bit about the appropriation status?
Yes, absolutely. So Tampa Bay Water has 2 funding requests currently pending, as you all know. Of those, one has received a $150,000 placeholder. That's the Cypress Bridge well field improvement. And just as a budget reminder, as Pete mentioned, the House and Senate both passed their respective budgets off the floors last week. This sets up the stage for conference committee. And so there are a number of projects, either in a Senate budget or a House budget, that don't line up dollar-wise, and those issues will be resolved out in conference. We want to be in a position every year of having funding as a placeholder for our projects. We've achieved that this year at this point, and we'll be working to complete that funding process over the next couple of weeks, as Pete mentioned. To stay on schedule and have a timely finish, the budget really needs to be finished by the Monday prior to the Friday of last day of session, which is scheduled for March 13th. And so we expect conferees to the conference committees to be named as early as this week or late in the week, and then they'll begin their conferencing process perhaps as early as likely next week with allocations, and then completing budget work over the following week. So again, $150,000 in for Cypress Bridge, which is one of our two requests, and that's where things stand on the funding side.
Okay. Just so you all know, the way the process works, placeholder doesn't really sound that great. But in the way the process works is you get your project in and as a placeholder. Most all projects are in as placeholders. The staff and Senate both get their final allocations after another round with the budget estimating conference, and then the committees all get their final allocations, and that's when they'll decide not just what gets funded, it will be how much. So I wasn't sure that was clear to everybody, but it's a little bit different than when I was up there. We tried to get everything in at the full amount at the beginning, not the end. So, okay, well, any questions? Okay, I see no questions, y'all. You gave a great report. Thank you all very much.
Madam Chair, let me also mention that we are in a weekly end of the week briefing conversation with staff every week. There is a written report that goes out every week that's being distributed, so to the extent members are interested in what's happening and the things we've discussed, that's a weekly thing that's being distributed so that they're available to you.
Excellent. Thank you so much for all your hard work up there. Okay, thanks. We can sign off.
Signing off.
Thank you. Okay, our next item on the agenda is a General Counsel report.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. Item H1 is a follow-up from an item I brought to the January Executive Committee meeting about a water quality issue, PFAS, which is a group of chemical compounds that you may have heard about lately. PFAS stands for polyfluoroalkyl substances. And these chemical compounds are used frequently in firefighting foam, protective coatings, and other consumer products. These are unregulated compounds, and therefore they aren't part of Tampa Bay Water's routine water quality testing. The last time sampling was done in cooperation with member governments was in the 2015 timeframe, and the compounds were not detected using the methodologies in place at that time. While these are unregulated compounds, the EPA does have health advisory levels for PFAS and PFOA at individual or combined concentrations of 70 parts per trillion. The EPA will be coming out with new unregulated contaminant monitoring rule guidelines for the next round of sampling and testing in the coming year, we believe. And these are the guidelines for what to test for and how to do the testing, and Tampa Bay Water will follow them with the next round of sampling. There is litigation ongoing similar to a class action lawsuit, it's called multi-district litigation, against several PFAS manufacturers. The multi-district litigation is based in South Carolina, and the cases include claims based on products liability, negligence, nuisance, and trespass. Multi-district litigation is a consolidation of separate cases with similar issues for purposes of addressing those common issues. Tampa Bay Water staff and counsel have been approached by two different teams of lawyers involved in the multi-district litigation. Each team has a local attorney along with several other attorneys, including some from out of state, involved in the litigation. If future testing were to show that these compounds are in Tampa Bay Water's system, Tampa Bay Water may be able to recover monetary damages by participating in litigation. The first team we spoke with is comprised of Barron and Budd, Cossack, Sumix, Parciola, and Taylor, and Young and Partners, which is based in Tampa. The second team we spoke with is comprised of Fraser Law, Ventura Law, Napoli Skolnick, and Frank Charles Miranda, PA, which is based in Tampa. Both teams demonstrated they are very qualified and hold leadership positions on the plaintiff side in the ongoing litigation. Legal services are exempt from competitive procurement requirements under Florida law. I asked both teams to provide me with a proposed retainer agreement. The first team, led by Cossack Sumich, proposed a fee of 33 1/3% of any award Tampa Bay Water might receive, plus costs and expenses. The second team, led by Roe Fraser and Napoli Skolnick, proposed a fee of 25% of any award Tampa Bay Water might receive, plus costs and expenses. I would also note that several members of this team, including Frank Miranda, represented Tampa Bay Water in the BP oil matter. Because of the lower fee structure and prior experience with them, I'm recommending that Tampa Bay Water move forward with the team that includes Roe Fraser, Ventura Law, Napoli Skolnick, and Frank Miranda, and sign a retainer agreement with them. While Tampa Bay Water is not currently aware that these chemicals are in the water sources relied on by the agency, I am recommending this approach so the agency is ready if such compounds are detected in the future. The second part of my recommendation is that the board delegate authority to the general manager in consultation with the chair and the general counsel to file suit at some point in the future if testing reveals actionable levels of these compounds in Tampa Bay Water's system.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I'm going to abstain and leave the room for any discussion for the purpose I have a family member involved in the lawsuit.
We noticed. Thank you. Okay, questions. This really doesn't cost us anything. It's, and if something comes out of it, Tampa Bay Water will definitely benefit from, any additional resources to move forward with water quality. So, may I have a motion?
I'll move the recommendation.
Question here.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. You're recognized. And now that we have a motion on the floor, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairwoman. I wanted to see how my colleagues felt about maybe just looking at this topic at next month's facilitated workshop. And my thought is that if we could just kind of take a step back for a moment and hear from our water quality experts to get better educated on this. We know that there's a new federal and state legislation frameworks coming down the pike. We're having a lot of discussions about Exhibit D and potentially hundreds of millions of dollars that we're spending to reduce TOC levels. And I just thought it might be worth it to have a thoughtful discussion on what the board policy is with contaminants of emerging concern. And maybe we want to have that discussion before jumping in right away. And I'm not suggesting that we just delay this. I'm just saying that maybe if we talked about this next month, it would give us a chance to kind of get to wrap our heads around this a little bit better before we just jump in.
Okay. I probably have the most knowledge on this because they approached me months ago, and as far as the county is concerned, Hillsborough County, and then I turned it over to Tampa Bay Water. We can't take, actually the policy at Hillsborough County is we don't take votes at workshops, so we wouldn't be able to take a vote then. So we would probably be delaying this for 2 months going forward. But let's hear from the other board members. Commissioner Smith.
Yes, I'm not really understanding why we couldn't retain one of these firms to begin the process while we discuss and have our own teams, testing and discuss the implications of pollution. I'm not really getting why we would have to wait before retaining the firm. If maybe Councilwoman Darden.
Would you like to
My
answer?
suggestion is that the board develop a policy on contaminants of emerging concerns. We have to do it anyway.
But I get Commissioner Smith's point is, yes, that policy is great. We can develop that, but it shouldn't necessarily hold this up going forward.
My thought.
Yeah. And for the benefit, I would probably agree with that. But yes, Commissioner Eggers.
Yeah, I'm not sure what difference it makes waiting a month or two on this. When I've heard a couple people talk about starting the process, from my understanding, at least the recommendation, starting the process is selecting a firm and just having them sit and wait to see if there's any kind of action needed after the new testing is identified and the results from those testing is brought forward. So beginning the process to me is simply about selecting a firm, because, so is that the thought as well, or I just want to make sure I'm clear on that point?
Yes, that would be the first step. We may also choose to do some testing sooner rather than later to evaluate Tampa Bay water system. We could do some testing in the coming months to gauge where we are. We could wait for the EPA guidelines. We could do both.
Okay. But that has really nothing to do with the legal side.
Well, it is integrated with that in that the lawyers would be working with staff and other experts to interpret the results and make decisions based on those test results.
All right. Well, I'm equally uncomfortable just jumping into it. I think I'd like to have more discussion and dialogue. I think the workshop's a great place to do it because, again, I think that from what you just said, there's some new guidelines coming, and there'll be some testing going on. We haven't found it in the testing that we've done so far. So I think we're almost acknowledging that there's going to be a problem before we have a problem. And if you were just selecting a firm there, we can run a parallel course and do any testing we want, but we still have to wait generally for what the new guidelines are going to be. They may be different, substantially different, or they could be the same. So I don't have any problem with staff continuing to do those tests and continue to do that work. I just don't want it to trigger anything legally. And I also wonder why the chair would be the person that our executive director would consult with along with counsel. I think unless there's an emergency.
Are you talking about me?
No, I'm not. I'm just talking about the comment was that the executive director would counsel with you, with the chair, and with our counsel about whether to file the lawsuit. And I just think that unless there's an emergency, my goodness, we could bring it back to this board for a decision. And I think that would be the appropriate thing to do. So, I mean, I just think taking a little bit of time and talking about it next month would be appropriate. And there's nothing wrong with that in my mind. So I would support that.
Commissioner Oakley?
Choosing a firm at this time, does that trigger any fees or any litigation or anything that?
There's no cost.
If I may, the fee structure for both firms that have proposed, it's a contingency-based fee. So only if there's a recovery would Tampa Bay Water be responsible for paying their fees.
Out of what?
Out of whatever,
the settlement
whatever damage, whatever monetary recovery Tampa Bay Water might make, in addition to costs and expenses that the firms incur, which is a traditional arrangement.
I don't have any problem waiting and discussing a little more with our board before we choose that firm.
Okay, Mayor?
Yeah, the only downside to waiting would be if something blows up in the interim, because we do meet on an every other month basis. That being said, Commissioner Rice makes a valid point. This is something we need to, I think, talk about how we want to deal with these contamination elements of emerging concern. So I don't know that I care much one way or the other which way we do it. I suspect we're going to wind up at some point having to retain counsel just to protect ourselves.
Right. I mean, that's the point. I mean, this is just to retain somebody so that, and I don't really have a dog in this fight, but I asked our Hillsborough County, and I know the city of Tampa was checking with their fire, I guess your fire stations. It kind of revolves around the fire training facilities and things like that. I think you guys have looked into that as well as Hillsborough County has. And I'm sure other counties are doing the same. But this is just about getting in the queue. And I will tell you, they are pushing really hard in South Carolina. Is it so?
The cases are pending in South Carolina.
Yeah, they're pushing pretty hard to try and get some kind of a pre-settlement done. So the longer we wait, the more risk we have of not getting it possibly a portion of the settlement. I understand. I think you can accomplish both here. I think we're going to have this discussion about water quality, but I'll be honest with you, we delay everything at this board, and I think this is just something very simple to just move forward. So we do have a motion on the floor with, would you like me to comment?
Well, I would like, I'm okay with moving forward with the attorneys today, but I think we could have discussion with this at the workshop.
Yeah, and we will do that. It'll be on the agenda. So we do have a motion on the floor and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Oh, wait. You're asking for the vote. I'm sorry. I had a question. I just wanted to make.
So I thought we were out of discussion.
That's fine.
Okay. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Like sign opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Nay. So it 5 to 3. So show that pass. Okay, Commissioner Eggers?
No, I just want to make sure that, first of all, we don't have the parameters, so we don't know what to test for yet. We knew what to test for in 2015. New parameters are coming out. So my only comment was, all we've done is put somebody on retainer to do nothing at this point. I certainly hope to do nothing until we have some dialogue. That was really the conversation that we were trying to have. And also to make sure that this board is clued in when we do get to that point. So thank you.
Great, thank you for your comments. Okay, we will now move into water production. Our first presentation is Chuck Carden, and we also will take a motion on this item also. Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the board. Agenda item I1 is the comprehensive management plan for the Hillsborough River, the Tampa Bypass Canal, Sulphur Springs, and the Morris Bridge Wellfield. The comprehensive plan is a requirement in section 3.08G of the amended and restated interlocal agreement. Over the last several years, the City of Tampa, the Southwest Florida Water Management District, and Tampa Bay Water have all worked tirelessly on creating this document. The plan provides a comprehensive information for the multiple uses and roles that all three entities share for this surface water system. The goal was to create a document that references information from the numerous water use permits, coordination plans, and other various documents. The plan will continue to facilitate the management of water-related activities for the river and the TBC. It will be reviewed every 5 years and updated as needed. Staff recommends that Tampa Bay Water agree to the comprehensive management plan subject to the City of Tampa and the district doing the same. Thank you.
Is that it?
I'm it.
Chuck, I think that's the shortest presentation you've ever made.
I saw how many we had, and I said, I'm going to get it up and down as fast as I can.
Very good. Is there any questions? May I have a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Like sign opposed, show that pass. Thank you. Next presentation will be John Kennedy.
That's a high bar for a short presentation.
He set the bar for you, John, so.
I'll do my best. Agenda item I2 is ask your approval of a ranking and authorization for staff to negotiate an engineering contract with a firm for the services for the Hillsborough County booster pump station. As we presented it to you last month, this pump station will be placed on our existing transmission main, 36-inch diameter, and it will increase flows by boosting pressure between 5 and 7 million gallons a day in our existing system. This is a short-term facility that needs to be online by 2024 to keep up with increasing demands in the South County area. You approved an option agreement for the parcel on which this booster station will sit at your last board meeting. Following a standard Consultants Competitive Negotiation Act, this is the ranking of the evaluation of the respondents, and staff recommends the board approve this ranking and allow us to get going on negotiations in order until we have a successful fee and scope, starting with Reese Engineering Incorporated. Our goal would be we'd try to be back to you in April for your approval.
Move approval.
Second.
Okay, thank you very much. Another brief presentation. Very good. We have a motion to approve and a second. Is there any further discussion? Questions? Okay, seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Like sign opposed, show that pass. And then the second part
This
is a status report.
This is a bit longer because the pipe itself is a bit longer, so it's indicative of the project that we're dealing with. This project is intended to be online by the time the booster station is at full capacity. We're shooting here for 2028. Last month, at your December meeting, we presented this pipeline project as part of our program to increase permanently the deliver capacity to South County. And as part of this, we started route and corridor studies, which you approved back in the fall of 2018. We're several hundred hours into this at the staff level and several thousand hours of this into this at the consulting level. And we've been working steadily on this for the past 14 months. The reasons why we needed to do these corridor studies is we need to update our capital improvement program for cost and schedule and develop an internal staffing plan to manage this project and provide a basis for continued discussions with county utility staff and County Public Works, who owns the rights-of-way, and support a potential co-funding application to Southwest Florida Water Management District for this project. The studies included two components, a web-based public outreach component and engineering reports. The purpose of this project is to connect the additional supplies that we already have permit and treatment capacity for at our high service pump station, which is at this location, which is near the intersection of US 301 and State Route 60 in Brandon, with the existing Lithia water treatment plant. Might need some help with that. With the existing Lithia water treatment plant, where we deliver supplies under our existing contractual obligations to Hillsborough County, and that's the one that's getting close to its capacity. And we also looked at potential for routes to a proposed Hillsborough County water campus. So the mission here was to see, could we find cost-effective routes that would be able to do the entire work in front of us. The engineering study results provide significant insight to these pipeline corridors. All route alternatives are going to go through an urban environment. There are no route alternatives available whatsoever that are a rural construction. What this means is that we're going to have complex engineering and real estate acquisition, and this informs our project schedule. We thought this would be the case, but now we are very certain that this is the case. Secondly, and this was a pleasant surprise, most routes that are available go past or very near the Lithia water treatment plant. This is great news. This means that we can cost effectively, without restarting again, get going on our way to the Lithia water plant without prejudicing Hillsborough County's opportunity to cost effectively connect the Lithia water plant with the water campus when it makes its final decision. And then thirdly, the cost estimates are available to us now for this project. They've been updated, and we now can update our capital improvement plan. That is something that you receive every June. And last June, we brought that to you as part of our 10-year CIP, but we brought what's called a placeholder project. It means something a bit different, perhaps, than was described earlier, but it was a $90 million project, and it was for a 36-inch diameter. And we're talking now about a different scale of project. The pipeline that's proposed for this need is a 60-inch diameter project that can deliver 50 million gallons a day at peak. And this project, when online, will be a second pipeline that will go to Lithia. The existing pipeline will stay in service, as will the booster station that we're committing to. The corridors are available, are urbanized in all or in part. And the photo on this picture shows you the kind of thing we get into in these urban corridors. This is a 36-inch jacking pit near the intersection of Gun Highway and Citrus Park by the Hillsborough County Trail. You see the workers standing there. These are the kinds of things that slow you down when you're in an urban environment, and it means that you need some extra time to get the project home. There were two components that we looked at. This is a slide that we showed you in December. This is the public outreach. We did a web-based public outreach, which was a broadcast to invite the public to express its concerns with pipeline corridor routings, given that we would have to be going somewhere in the service area. And we pulled them on the topics that are on the right-hand column. On the left, these are the top 5 concerns that they had. And we got almost 700 hits on this website survey, and this was a great way for us to get started. And we turned the results of this survey over to the engineers so that we could get a reasonable alignment between what the engineers are studying and why, compared to what the public thought and gave us feedback on. The engineering studies are based on what's called a desktop evaluation, and the desktop evaluation uses the information sources, in this case, that are on the left-hand column, and uses those sources to evaluate the parameters or the issues of interest in the right-hand column. And in that right-hand column, the 5 things that I showed you from the most important in the previous slide are all reflected in the parameters quantified in this column. So we have a good way of getting started in our corridor selection. Now we're going to take a look at what these corridors are and further describe them. There's 3 route corridors available through the Brandon area. Corridor A is generally on the west side. Corridor B generally goes through the middle. And Corridor C generally goes through the east side. Going to look at them a little bit larger now. This is Corridor A. It's a little over 22 miles in length. It requires nearly 100 acres of easement. That's a lot of easements. And it has nearly 3/4 mile of special crossings. When I say special crossings, we're talking about how to get under the interstate. We're talking about how to get under Route 60, US 301, and the Alafia River. These are akin to building tunnels. So, well, they are building tunnels, either soft dig or rock tunnels, and nearly 3/4 miles of tunnels on this job, and it has a cost estimate of $206 million to go all the way to the Hillsborough County proposed water campus. Corridor B through the middle of the area is nearly 25 miles long, requires approximately 70 acres of easement. Again, it has 3/4 mile of tunnels, and it has a cost of $201 million. Corridor C is the most direct route. It's 22 miles long, requires approximately 50 acres of easement, still has 3/4 mile of tunnels, and it has a $180 million cost. Now, these costs and mileages that I'm giving you are all the way to the proposed Hillsborough County Water Campus, which is cited based on staff-level discussions that we've been having with Hillsborough County for the past year or 2. We also looked at Corridor C and truncated it at the Lithia Water Treatment Plant. And that project is 16 miles long. It requires about approximately 40 acres of easement. It still has 3/4 mile of tunnels, and it has a cost estimate in its most expensive alignment of $131 million. This would be the project that is the minimum project Tampa Bay Water needs to do to continue to supply its obligations under the governance agreements to an existing point of connection. This aerial is typical for a significant amount of portions of all corridors studied, and it gives you an idea of why we need to be working now with major stakeholders as our next steps to refine these corridors to make certain that we're planning things that can actually happen in reality. Those major stakeholders are FDOT, Tampa Electric, and Hillsborough County Public Works Department. This is a summary of the corridor studies and just gives you a comparison of the information that's in the draft corridor studies that were turned into us in late January. And it shows you that approximately 2/3 of the total capital cost is involved in getting to Lithia, 1/3 of it after that in getting to the water campus. In a scenario where Tampa Bay Water would be involved in going to the water campus, the county would be paying the difference between going to Lithia versus going to the water campus. However, the good news is that there's a lot of flexibility available to us now that we didn't realize, and that's because there's a cost-effective way. We had thought when we started these it would be either or, and what we found is that it's both and we can cost-effectively get to Lithia, and that doesn't prejudice the county in cost-effectively connecting the water campus by its own project to the Lithia water plant if that's how the county and Tampa Bay Water choose to do that. We'd like to talk for a minute about schedule, and this is a pretty significant part of the presentation. Now that we know that the corridors have common segments and all routes are complex, we recommend that we move the project schedule forward in time. And this will help us get going now, establish momentum, and minimize project risks to be online in 2028. This graphic shows on the upper half the current project schedule that's actually incorporated in the board received CIP from June of last year, and it shows that we started detailed design in fiscal 23. Now that we have a better idea of the amount of easements, the lineal footage, the soft and hard tunnels that we have, and the amount of negotiations that we have to have with significant stakeholders, we recommend that we move the project forward. What's shown on this slide in the top half is the existing project schedule where we would be starting and getting incremental funding for the design and property acquisition with the first green arrow pointing down to fund that amount of activity, and then getting a second amount of funding for the construction. So this is an incremental funding buildup in how to implement a project, which is a very effective way to go, where you don't sell your construction funding until you know what those construction costs are going to be. The lower half of this slide shows you the improved schedule that staff is intending to follow at this point, where we would be starting our detailed design during fiscal 21, which means we would be working on our selections for our engineer by the end of fiscal 20 so we can hit the ground running. And this would give us more time to do the light gray part, which is the property acquisition and design and the permitting, and we could still have the construction and reduce the risk of having the construction completed by 2028. Again, we would be doing incremental funding in here. That incremental funding in the first case would be moved up and could be moved up in the second case, but that's a decision you can be making at that point in time as the project matures. In both cases, we're showing an orange line in here. At least it's orange on my chart, and I have my cataracts out, so we'll just let that go. But my eyes tell me that it's orange, and that is a SwiftMud co-funding opportunity. The staff believes that this project is a good candidate to be eligible for participation by SwiftMud co-funding. The Southwest Florida Water Management District has co-funded other projects we've had to further distribute alternative water supplies, including the expansion of the high service pump station, which is a construction contract you approved in October, which is intended in part to feed this pipeline. Also, the district has co-funded other pipeline projects in our system that distribute the alternative water supplies. So we would intend here to be applying for a co-funding application by this October to get ourselves positioned for the next co-funding cycle by the district. And in the case where the county would be taking over a pipeline project between its water campus and Lithia, for example, it could be doing the same thing. And actually it tells a good story because they would add up. So in summary, the project is complex and schedule sensitive. We can get started now without prejudicing the result. Most route segments that are cost effective go right to or pass by the Lithia water plant. And if the county selects a water campus site, at that point in time, the project can be adjusted if they're asking us to participate in it, or the county can self-perform with its own contractors between Lithia and the water campus. These are the next steps your staff plans to take and that's to finalize the corridor studies. We provided the drafts to the county back in early February, and we would be engaging our major stakeholders to refine the corridors this spring and summer, update our CIP project cost with an earlier start schedule for your review when you meet to consider that in the April and your June board meetings, and develop the next phase of public outreach, engage our district co-funding planning at the executive level this spring and summer so that we don't just show up in October with a $130 million co-funding request, but it actually helps if we have those discussions at the right levels ahead of time. And we can stand by and wait for the county decision on its water campus while we are doing things that are not in conflict with that water campus decision. And we would be starting our engineer procurement this fall and getting ready for our Swift Mode co-funding application. Be happy to answer your questions.
Thank you, John, for your presentation. And as always, very thorough and complete. I appreciate your all the information and hard work that you put into this. Just as that item C, you'll have to really work with our public works staff because it goes down the busiest, most congested road in Hillsborough County, Lithia Pinecrest. And I would kind of be concerned if we're doing construction along there.
Yep.
Especially, well, if you're buying right away, I'm sure it would be off the road, but still it might really create some big problems. So anyway, so we'll move on. Commissioner Eggers.
Yeah, well, thank you for the presentation. Great news. It's really wonderful to be moving along sooner. I noticed that that the light blue area there in the proposed schedule got longer. Is that just providing a little bit more time for uncertainty?
Yes.
So you could conceivably move that up as you go forward. I mean, it could be accelerated. Additional. Okay, yes. Gotcha. And this schedule all the way to the end gets us construction to Lithia?
Yes.
Okay. So if it was going to go further than that, it would go beyond that time.
No, actually what we'd be doing is we'd be putting on more contractors at the same time and working several headers at once.
To finish at the same time?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so in the time frame for that information from Hillsborough County would be?
It'll be forthcoming when the county guys can,
when they're ready.
Okay. Authorized to tell us. But the good thing here is that we can get going without prejudicing their decisions.
That's great news. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, Commissioner Oakley.
Thank you for your report. So we haven't chosen A, B, or C at this point in time. Is that correct? Or
C is our favorite.
Which one? C?
C is our favorite.
Well,
we have to further refine it.
The best
that's why I made the. That's why.
Saving money is pretty good, so.
That's why I made the comments about the road. It probably would be our favorite, but that road in particular is a huge problem.
Yeah, but the brass ring to grab for here, if we can, is the county has a road project to widen Lithia Pinecrest. And if there's a way that we can coordinate our activities with them,
when that works out,
that would be a good opportunity, and we need to further explore that. And we needed to come here and explain this today so that we had portfolio to do that.
If you do C, then you've got to hook up another project to Lithia separate, or is that all, C is all the way to Lithia?
C is all the way to Lithia, and then the county can decide to ask us to participate in constructing to a water campus, or the county can construct its own pipeline from the water campus to Lithia. Either way, it'll achieve the same goal and be the same cost for the county.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Great, thank you. All good questions. Yes, Commissioner Stark.
Well, as my fellow commissioner knows, anytime a project comes in front of me, I always say the word trails. And so as you route this corridor, I would like to suggest that we look at the feasibility of putting a trail on top of it and making it a real asset for the community. I had that discussion with the former head of Tampa Bay Water, as I mentioned to you in our meeting, about putting a trail along the corridor in Pasco County. And I just think it's a great use of public money to turn a lemon into lemonade. And so I would ask to keep that in consideration as you choose your route. And I want that added to our workshop a discussion like that. So.
The trails, okay, so noted. I don't know who on staff is taking that note down, but make sure that we have that.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, trails are great. Commissioner Smith, she's our trail expert on the county.
I'm a huge advocate for trails, and if we, whatever we can do to find, gain cost savings by combining projects together on our end, I would be very happy to have those discussions at our workshop as well. I don't know if it is such a factor where you are, but in the Tampa Bay area, we are constantly rated among the most dangerous places in America for bicycles and pedestrians, and we've really got to start providing safe infrastructure for bicycle and pedestrian. This might provide some really good opportunities for that. When you gave the prices or the costs of each of these different corridors, is that, and I heard it ranging from 130 million to 200-ish million, which is a pretty wide range. Is that the whole thing from, well, I guess Corridor C only goes to Lithia, right?
Yes.
No. Yeah.
They all go to Lithia, don't they? Yeah. That's the purpose.
Okay, the top three, Commissioner, are high service to Lithia, and those are between $104 and $131 million. Right. The bottom three are the corridors, and they are between 183 and 206, and that's all the way to the water campus. They're numbered the way they are coming from the reports, and we already had a lot of slides in here to show, so I didn't show the exact ones, all of the exact ones to Lithia.
Got it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, we don't have the maps.
Move approval.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a...
That's staff's recommendation, C.
Yeah.
Well, I thought this was a status report. Is this a status report, right? Okay.
Oh, okay.
That's
So
what I thought, yeah.
Okay.
We're not taking a vote. Okay.
No, we won't be picking for when we'll... The selection.
It'll be a little while. There will be you'll be picking, you'll be asked to consider an engineer within the next year or a couple of design firms in order to do the pipeline project. That gives this time to mature and Hillsborough County to make its decisions.
Okay, very good. Thank you very, very much. And I guess you're going to give the next project to number 3?
Yes, ma'am. Agenda item I3 is a comebacker from, we came to you in October. We were only successful getting a sole bid for this project for $1.6 million. You supported our recommendation to reject that bid and try again. Your staff, including the purchasing and engineering departments, and thanks to Pinellas County piggybacking contract opportunities that we have, we were able to secure a contractor to do this under a piggyback contract that's before you today for your consideration. This project is to increase the automation on the Tampa bypass canal gates. It's co-funded by SwiftMud in the amount of $516,000. And this is representing to you a $654,000 savings over what we had proposed, over what we had asked the board to reject back in October. This will be done under a piggyback contract that was competitively procured by Pinellas County government. And staff recommends a award of the piggyback contract in the amount of $1,028,000, $1,028,000 and $250 to PCL Contractors Incorporated.
Move approval.
Okay, thank you for your report. We do have a motion to approve and a second. Is there any further discussion or questions? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Like sign opposed, show that passed. Thank you, John. And number 4 is Maribel Medina.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the board. Agenda item I4 includes a recommendation for the award of a professional services contract for engineering services for the Cypress Bridge Wellfield Improvements Project. The Cypress Bridge Wellfield in Hillsborough and Pasco counties, as shown on the map to the right, supplies an average of 11 million gallons per day and up to a maximum of 40 million gallons per day of drinking water to the Tampa Bay region. The Cypress Bridge Wellfield Improvements Project is identified in our Capital Improvements Program and includes the replacement of 10 pumps, motors, and electrical components, and 3 generators. This project is funded with renewal and replacement funds, or pay-as-you-go funds, and last year, Tampa Bay Water applied for state grant assistance under general appropriations for fiscal year 2020. That was discussed earlier today in agenda item G3. Staff procured professional engineering services in accordance with the state's Consultant Competitive Negotiation Act and negotiated a scope and fee with the top-ranked firm, Stantec Consulting Services, Inc. Engineering services will include design, bidding assistance, and construction inspection and management services. Staff recommends awarding contract 2020-026 in the amount of $1,319,903 for design, bidding, and construction services to Stantec Consulting Services, Inc. Madam Chair, this concludes my brief presentation, and I will be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much for your brief presentation. Okay, is there any questions? Do I have a motion to approve?
Second.
Yes, we have a motion to approve and a second on item I4. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Like sign opposed, show that pass. Thank you. And now we're on J1, Warren.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. I'll reset that bar of time just a little bit, but I won't take too much time today. I thank you for your time, and this is the first in a series of informational presentations that I'll make to you this year to prepare for the renewal of our consolidated water use permit. This permit represents the single largest component of our water supply system, so renewal of this permit is one of the most critical items that we have on our plate for the year. This presentation will give you some history in order to set the context for the presentations that will come at subsequent meetings, and this will lead to a recommendation to approve the permit application in either the August or the October board meeting. First, a quick orientation to the consolidated water use permit. This permit authorizes Tampa Bay Water to pump water from 11 well fields, all located north of the Tampa Bay area. Those are the well fields shown in green on the map. These well fields were constructed between 1931 and 1992 by either one of the member governments or the West Coast Regional Water Supply Authority. Each well field was issued its own water use permit starting in 1975 when the Water Management District began issuing permits. These individual permits were gathered together and consolidated into a single permit issued to Tampa Bay Water through the partnership agreement in 1998. The driver behind the public water supply demand is our population. In 1930, about the time of the first wellfield development, the Tampa area had a population of 226,000 people. Following World War II, the 50s was a decade of very rapid growth, and our population almost doubled in that 10-year span. Since 1960, we've seen a strong and steady increase in the population for our region, and that can be seen also in the pumping history of the well fields. Between 1930 and 1990, the shape or the slope of this graph looks very similar to the previous graph of population growth. This shows the annual average pumping from each of the well fields of the consolidated permit that were active during any one year. And the oldest well field, as I mentioned, began in 1931. As our population grew, so did the demand for water and pumping from the well fields. The well fields were added one by one as the demand for water increased, and we reached a cumulative average of 160 million gallons per day from these well fields. Each of the older well fields had different types of environmental stresses, ranging from low to very low water levels in lakes and wetlands, or the loss of wetland plants and trees. Throughout the late 1980s and mid-90s, the Tampa Bay region struggled with an extended severe drought, and groundwater pumping continued to increase to meet the demand for water. Drought and wellfield pumping were two of the key factors that led to environmental stress and damage on and around the well fields. These are two extreme examples of impacts or stress to lakes and wetlands, but there were many stress systems throughout the northern Tampa Bay area. In 1998, we made a significant change in our structure and we reformed into Tampa Bay Water. Part of the restructuring included the partnership agreement with the district that set out to end the litigation between the district, Tampa Bay Water, and the member governments, develop alternative water supplies, and to reduce groundwater withdrawals. The district also included funding for the region's alternative water supplies, and it included our first original consolidated permit. Tampa Bay Water now operates a fully interconnected regional water supply system with 3 source water types. We purchased the members' well fields through governance, and we now operate all the groundwater sources as an integral part of our regional supply system. Even though we've reduced the pumping from the 11 well fields, they still form the stable baseload component of our regional system. They're very important. In water year 19 that recently closed, we delivered an average of 173.5 million gallons a day to you. About 63% of that was from groundwater, and the consolidated permit well fields made up about 46% of the water that we delivered each day. This is a significant part of our supply portfolio, making renewal of this permit a critical work item for us. Tampa Bay Water rotates pumping among the well fields based on current environmental conditions. We accomplish this through our optimized regional operations plan. We maintain the wellfield pumping rate below the 90 million gallon per day annual average limit, and we balance our multiple supply sources based on current demands and current hydrologic conditions, rainfall and water levels. In times when these hydrologic conditions are poor, we have our water shortage mitigation plan that helps us manage our supply sources through drought events. This was the plan that the board approved in April of 2017. Earlier, I mentioned the high level of wellfield pumping in the past in dry lakes and wetlands near the wellfield. The original consolidated permit called for a phased reduction in pumping from the initial 158 million gallons per day, eventually down to 90. For the past 10 years, the average pumping from the wellfields has been less than 90, a little over 80 million gallons a day. We've cut our wellfield pumping in half compared to the peak pumping rate of 160 back in 2000. This was one of the goals of the partnership agreement, and we've achieved that goal. In response to the reduced pumping and a return to more normal rainfall conditions, lakes and wetlands across the region have greatly improved. This is the same wetland that I showed in an earlier slide from the heart of the Starkey wellfield. 10 years separate these two photographs, and they were both taken at the end of the May dry season. Water levels have increased about 7 feet between these two photos. This is the lake that I showed earlier. It's Lake Rogers at the Cosme Odessa wellfield. 14 years separate these two photographs before and after the pumping reduction, and the water levels in this lake increased about 16 vertical feet between those two time periods. These improvements are not isolated. We've seen them across the northern Tampa Bay area in recent years. We've been working with the Water Management District staff very closely for the last 9 years to work to assess the amount of recovery that's due to our reduction in pumping and the condition of all the lakes and wetlands. In order to renew the consolidated permit later this year, we're completing a recovery assessment plan. Under this plan, we've been looking at hundreds of lakes and wetlands across our northern region, and our evaluation will look to see if there's any remaining adverse impacts due to our pumping, and if so, we'll develop options to address those impacts. The analyses and the final results of the recovery assessment plan will be the topic of my presentation to you at the April board meeting. In June, I'll be here to talk with you about proposed conditions for the next permit term, including incorporating the water shortage mitigation plan into our water use permit. I'll discuss the coordination that we've had with your staffs and our communication with the public. We plan to present the final application package to you for consideration and approval in either August or October of this year. This was for information only today. There's no recommended action, but I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you so much for your presentation. Is there any questions? I see no questions. Very good. Thank you. And then Steve Fleischhacker?
Yes.
I got it.
You did.
He's going to give the next presentation. It's another status report.
Good morning, Madam Chair and board members. Today's water quality update identifies progress made since the last board meeting when the board approved the Exhibit D water quality study and its recommendations for further study. Since the last board meeting, staff has developed a scope of work, outline, and schedule, and we began consultant selection activities. Now, we will follow the Consultants Competitive Negotiation Act, otherwise known as CCNA, the procurement process to select a consultant for the new work. We plan to come back to the board this June with a recommended consultant, scope, and cost. While we'll begin this work a few months later than planned, because of the CCNA process, this will not change the June 2022 milestone date when we plan to seek board approval to begin implementing the enhanced water quality projects. Now, staff met with utility directors on January 24th to present the preliminary scope and schedule for the new work. Staff invited member governments to serve on the consultant selection committee. All utility directors accepted our invitation, and all member governments will be actively participating on the selection committee. Staff also asked utility directors for concurrence on a technical matter, that is, how to proceed with calcium hardness removal, given the relatively high costs identified in the 2019 water quality study. Utility directors provided consensus. We will focus on calcium hardness consistency and controlling variability, which should reduce costs. It's important to note that calcium hardness was a lower priority water quality parameter than total organic carbon, TOC, or color, as we had identified at the very beginning of the first study. Currently, staff is working with member governments to finalize the scope. We plan to advertise the new work at the beginning of March this year, receive consultants' proposals by the end of March, and review and rank the proposals in April. We then plan to publish a notice of intent and negotiate costs in May. And we'll be, as I said earlier, we'll be seeking board approval for the consultant's scope, for the consultants, the scope, and the cost in June of 2020. This concludes my brief update, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
Very good, thank you. Are there any questions of Steve?
Just one real quick question as it relates to any water quality improvements in the interim. What kinds of efforts are being made now in the short run to address maybe some of those water quality issues? Point of connection perhaps being one of them, just changing a point of connection for it.
So there's an ongoing evaluation right now of changing one particular point of connection that would be to the city of Tampa, given the fact that our supply is partially well field water at that point. They're used to, at the city of Tampa, getting surface water, and so we're evaluating the option of moving a point of connection so that when they do take water from us, it would be more akin to what they receive. It would be our surface water, which would match with their surface water in their distribution system. Okay. It's a minor assignment. A larger assignment that we're currently working on has to do with the regional free chlorine maintenance study, the evaluation of that kind of a program. That's where we're evaluating going from our combined chlorine residual during a periodic maintenance event to switch to free chlorine for a period of time. That was actually a study that you all approved from us back in October of 2018. We decided to back off of that until we did the first water quality study evaluating TOC, see where we stood. Once we completed that study, we have resumed the efforts on the regional free chlorine maintenance. And that's important to all the member governments because of their issues, particularly associated with the loss of chlorine residual and nitrification during summertime.
That's great. So regardless of where we end up, we're going to still continue on those, in the interim, addressing some of those issues.
Absolutely. We discussed those at every water quality working group meeting as well.
Excellent. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further questions? Yeah, thank you. I think just your engagement with the utility directors is been really key for us moving forward. And I'm really glad and encouraged that you want to continue those meetings and keep in communication and conversation with them.
Thank you. And I think, excuse me, I think a great sign of that is the fact that every single member government is going to participate in the selection committee process.
Oh, yeah, I think there probably isn't a member government that doesn't have somewhere within their utility where they have a water quality issue. And it's just the nature of the beast in Florida and our soil and everything else. Water quality is going to be a big issue. But I just, again, since this has been a big subject for me from day one, I really hope that we can move forward and actually commit to some kind of project to improve water quality throughout the Tampa Bay water.
Yes, we will, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, our next will be finance. Okay, very good.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. My name is Sandro Sverdlin, and I work as a finance manager at Tampa Bay Water. An independent audit of the agency's financial statements for fiscal year 2019 was completed by Malden and Jenkins. Here to present the results are Wade Sansbury, the engagement partner, and Daniel Anderson, the engagement manager.
Thank you, Sandro. Good morning, Madam Chair and board members. As Sandro mentioned, my name is Daniel Anderson, and I'm the audit manager in charge of the agency's 2019 fiscal year on audit. And Wade Sansbury and I are here to present the results of that audit to you. A brief agenda of our presentation, and we will try and keep it brief. I know that's kind of been the theme of the morning. A little bit of information about Malden and Jenkins. We'll provide an overview of the auditor's report and the opinions that we provided. We'll go through the required communications under governmental auditing standards, talk about some accounting recommendations and related matters, and then answer any questions that you may have at the end of our presentation. Malden & Jenkins is a large regional firm with 8 offices throughout the southeastern United States. As you can see, we're a little over 100 years old, and we are nationally recognized in the top 100 public accounting firms in the U.S. by Inside Public Accounting and Accounting Today. We service approximately 450 governments firm-wide, including 45 standalone business-type entities, such as the agency. Additionally, we service over 100 clients who annually receive the GFOA's Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting, a distinction that the agency receives itself. Our governmental practice features 25 partners and managers, such as Wade and myself, who dedicate 100% of our time to serving governmental entities. Our firm is dedicated to the profession and governmental accounting, as we have several individuals who teach at various national and state conferences. And then lastly, something that just happened recently is one of our governmental partners, Joel Black, was recently appointed the chair of the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, and his term will be effective July 1st, 2020. To provide an overview of the audit opinion, the quality of the financial reporting is the responsibility and representation of the agency's management and board. Management is responsible for the preparation and presentation of the financial statements. We have issued an unmodified opinion, which is the highest level of assurance that we can provide. Our audit was performed in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards as well as governmental auditing standards issued by the Comptroller General of the United States. So in summary, in our opinion, the financial statements are considered to present fairly in all material respects the financial position and results of operations for the agency for their September 30, 2019 fiscal year end. Some required communications for you: the accounting policies, management judgments, accounting estimates, and the financial statement disclosures are responsibility of the agency's management. During the course of our audit, we encountered no significant difficulties or had any significant issues that were discussed with management. There were no auditor adjustments or, that were posted or uncorrected misstatements in performing our audit. And there were no disagreements with management in regards to the application of accounting policies and procedures. We did obtain a representation from management on the information that they provided to us in order to perform our audit, and we are independent with respect to the agency. Next, there were no audit findings in performing our audit, no significant management points issued either. GASB is currently in their race to 100, I like to say, in implementing new standards. So there are several standards, GASB's 84 through 92, which will become effective over the next 5 years. And we will be working with management to ensure that the agency implements these standards in the proper way. One of the things that we do with that is provide free CPE to our clients that Tampa Bay Water employees have taken us up on and come in to a couple of our CPE opportunities. The next one we're hoping for is scheduled in May of 2020.
Thanks, Daniel. My name is Wade Sansbury. I'm the partner with Malden & Jenkins, who is in charge of your overall audit. I just wanted to thank you all for allowing us to be here with you today, and to thank you so much for allowing us to serve this great agency. This has been, I believe, our second or third year serving the agency. We've had nothing but very, very good experiences here. You all, your staff, they do a really good job in providing us with all the information that we need to accomplish the overall audit. They do a really good job of taking care of all the books and records, and you should be very, very proud of that fact. Again, I think Daniel did a good job. We've got a lot of information that's already been presented to you all. The CAFR itself is a very long and complex document. We did not intend to go over that with you today, but if you have any questions, we'll be happy to answer those at this time.
Any questions? Yes, Councilwoman Rice.
Thank you for your report. I know the CAFR is a long document, but one of the first things I do is look for the management letter. And that's typically where you would raise any red flags or cautionary statements. And as I read it, it sounds like we're doing really well, that there was nothing that you issued. Unfortunately, I wish you could say positive things, but what you have to say is like, you're not doing anything wrong.
That's correct. That's correct. Yes, ma'am. We did not have any, like Daniel said, we did not have any findings of whatsoever with regards to your policies and procedures and your actual recording of the activity during the year. And we didn't have any actual significant recommendations for improvement as well. You all are doing a very good job. The finance department should be commended for their hard works and efforts.
Thank you.
Yes, Commissioner.
Yeah, the only thing I was going to say is that you can't say anything, as you said, overly positive, but you can say what we haven't done negative. That's great. But what we can say is what you all did say about our finance department. Christina, you and your group, thank you for all the work that you do, because it's not always as smooth as this, and and the outcomes aren't always as good as this. But I really appreciate your effort, and obviously the findings are great. So, or the lack of findings are great. Thank you.
Any further comments? Receive the report. I need a motion to receive the report.
Move to receive.
Okay, and the second? Okay, we have a motion and a second to receive the report. All in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Like sign opposed, show that passed. And now Christine, they set the stage for you.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the board. This presentation covers the fiscal year 19 year-end transfers of encumbered and unencumbered funds and does not require any board action. Every year in August, the board approves transfers to various funds and accounts based upon an estimated year-end of unexpended funds. This is done at the last board meeting before the end of the fiscal year, so staff has the approval to make the transfers when closing out the fiscal year. The left side of the table identifies the destination of the funds being transferred. The amounts in the middle are the estimated amounts the board approved last August, and the right column reflects the actual year-end transfers made in fiscal year 19 to close the fiscal year out. Fiscal year 2019 ended with $6.9 million in purchase orders to carry forward to 20 to complete tasks that were started but not yet completed. This is just under the amount that we estimated in August. Annually, staff estimates about 2.5% of the prior year revenue remaining unencumbered at year end and budgets this amount to be carried forward into the next fiscal year. For fiscal year 20, the budgeted estimate was $4.2 million in unencumbered funds at the end of fiscal year 19, and this amount was carried forward into fiscal year 20. In June, staff roughly estimated ending fiscal year 19 with an additional $13.8 million in unencumbered funds and provided the board with the estimated transfer amounts in the middle column. Once all entries were completed for the fiscal year, the agency ended the year with $9.7 million in expended and unencumbered funds. This difference was largely due to an increased amount of FRS expense from the GASB 68 ruling and from unrealized gains and losses that we had estimated during the year that we had not fully received before the end of the fiscal year. With the actual amount being less than what we estimated, we did still transfer $5 million into the Capital Improvement Fund to increase our pay-as-you-go funding. And we transferred $4.5 million into the rate stabilization account, deferring those funds for use in future years. And the remaining $200,000 went into the Utility Reserve Fund. Under the agency's governance documents, funds collected in any year in the excess of its current costs may be deposited into the rate stabilization account with the board's approval and are accounted for as deferred inflows of resources until the board approves their use. The agency started 2019 with almost $36.6 million in the rate stabilization account, and during the year, the board approved a total of $12.1 million from the account to be used in fiscal year 19. $5.8 million of this was purchase orders carried forward, plus $3.6 and $1.2 million that was budget approved to use in fiscal year 19. The remaining $1.2 million was for budgeted items in 18 that were not yet started and were requested to be moved into 18 for use. The board approved a total of $18.2 million transferred into the rate stabilization account at the end of the year, which is mostly comprised of the $6.9 million in POs, $4.2 million of unencumbered funds that were approved at the board, and $1.5 million of other carried forward funds that the board approved for use, and $4.5 million that was left at the end of the fiscal year. The rate stabilization account ended the fiscal year 19 with a balance of $41.6 million, and the board has already approved a total of $15.7 million to be used in fiscal year 20. This is largely made up of the amounts identified with an asterisk, plus an additional $3.1 million approved use of funds in the fiscal year 20 budget. The agency has 5 funds that are restricted by governance. These funds are fully cash funded, and the slide shows the balances at the end of the fiscal year and the required amounts for each of these funds. The agency also has 2 additionally fully cash funded funds, which are not restricted by governance, but do require board approval for use. And the slide shows these balances for the fiscal year ending 2019, with the adjustment being made for the rate stabilization account after the fiscal year 20 board approval items go into place. This concludes my presentation, and I would be happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Any questions? Any questions?
What was the amount? What was the amount in the Utility Reserve Fund?
Ended the amount fiscal year 19 with $29 million.
And what percentage of our budget is that? And it's kind of weird, you know, in government, we're supposed to keep, what, 16%, but we have these other funds. So I don't even know what that number is because we have the rate stabilization fund and the other fund. So, you know, how much in fund, reserve fund balances, I guess if you add the rate stabilization fund to the utility reserve fund, how much do we have? And what percentage of total is that?
In all of our funds, we have a total of $292 million. Of this, 205 is restricted to purpose. And the utility reserve, which is the 29 million, 10% of our budgeted amount of that needs to be restricted per governance, which would leave about 11 million that's unrestricted in the utility reserve. So between that 11 million and the remaining 25 million that we have in the rate stabilization, that's roughly around 36 million. That's not earmarked for something. Plus we have 16 million that's used for our regular daily operations.
So what percentage of total are we talking about? That's the number we always look at the county commission, is to make sure in our different areas that we are at least at 16%. And that's the recommended number, right?
Right. Well, we do too. We're county. And is there a policy? Is there a board policy of that percentage of the budget that has to be in reserve?
For the rate stabilization, the board has implemented trying to maintain a 10% of the budgeted gross revenues. So that would be 18 million. We're currently at 25.
Okay.
So that leaves about a 7 million gap. The utility reserve does require a 10% of the gross revenues, again, which would be 18. So there is the remaining 11 million in that account. However, that account does go towards our bond covenant ratings, which we're required to have 1.25. With that fund at 29 million, we are maintaining a 1.5, which helps with the rating agencies. The fact that we do have such high cash liquidity accounts does help provide us with a strong AA+ rating.
Yeah, but I think we got a big cushion there, so just something to think about.
Yeah,
it is something that
we're in great shape. That's a wonderful thing, but sometimes you can be in, it's not always so good to be in too great a shape.
The rate stabilization has helped to maintain the rate, maintaining it at 2.559 for 9 years. And it is something that we can look at as we go forward with issuing new debt to help maintain those years until we get some savings in our debt payments.
Yeah, and I think we've got a presentation coming up on a refinance, so we're going to be in even better shape, so.
Right.
But we can talk about that at our workshop.
Right. That's always a big topic at our commission is if we go below or we want to stay above our threshold.
Right.
For reserve. Okay, great. Thank you very much. Any other questions? And we do need to receive this report. If I could have a motion to receive.
Move to receive the report.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to receive and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please record. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Likewise, no. Show that passed. And you're now going to give us a report on K3.
Right. Item K3 provides an overview of the fiscal year budget timeline and development process. Each December, staff starts the budget process to prepare a proposed budget by March. This slide shows some of the standard factors considered annually when developing the budget. Use of the rate stabilization funds and pay-as-you-go funding needs are two of the factors considered each year. Staff also considers additional attributes impacting the upcoming budget year. For fiscal year 21, these include the feasibility studies on the 3 master water plan projects, increasing funding for the Florida-friendly landscaping programs, the second year of the demand management program implementation, the regional water quality study, implementation of findings from the environmental resource permit audit, implementation of recommendations from the 2020 management and performance audit, and debt structure changes from refunding debt. The timeline for the fiscal year 21 proposed budget includes presentation of a preliminary proposed budget to the Executive Committee in March. Then in late March, early April, individual meetings with member government representatives will be held to review and discuss the proposed budget. Meeting invitations will include county administrators and utility directors. A budget workshop will be held in April where staff will present the fiscal year 21 proposed budget and the 21 through 29 capital improvement program to the board, providing an opportunity for discussion and questions. After the workshop, staff will follow up on any answers needed and revise the budget if necessary. And then in June, the agency will hold a public hearing to present the final 2021 budget, receive public comments, and request board approval. This concludes my presentation on the 21 budget timeline. I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions?
Move approval.
Okay, we have a motion to approve, to receive the report, and we have a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Sign opposed, show that passed. And then K4 is the refunding report.
I would like to introduce David Moore with PFM Financial Advisors, and he will be followed by Tom Giblin with Neighbors Giblins and Nickerson on the bond resolution to refund Series 10, 11A, and 2013.
Again, for the record, my name is David Moore. Madam Chair and board members, I'm a managing director with PFM Financial Advisors. We serve as your financial advisor. With me today is Nick Rocca, the brains of the operation. We work together in tandem with your staff on both your long-term planning, as Christina was just talking through the budget process. We also work with the agency as you were doing your multi-year capital planning, as well as pay attention to opportunities for debt refunding, which is why we're here today. This can be a real short presentation, not quite as short as some of the others, but the good news is, unlike the auditors that are not allowed to say anything positive, you have the opportunity to save $22 million today. Just a quick, we'll move through this as quick as possible. The left graphic on this page shows interest rates over the last 10 years, and they bounce up and down. But if you look at the green circle, you'll see we're at the lowest we've seen interest rates during the last 10 years. That's obviously an appealing time to refinance. Before we jump into the specific financing, I do want to just do a quick snapshot of your existing outstanding debt. Specifically, the debt service, including the acquisition payments, is about just under $80 million a year. And then it begins to step down. As you look across the page, you'll see that it steps down to about $70 million a year. And then in 2033, down to $40 million a year. You asked a question earlier about reserves and so forth. One of the things the credit rating agencies pay attention to is not just the cash you have in the bank, but your debt structure. And you have a very conservative debt structure. This list shows all of the outstanding financings for the agency. Unlike the mortgage on your house, where you may have a first and a second mortgage, in the world of debt in the governmental area, you have multiple series of debt outstanding at the same time. In your case, you have 11 financings outstanding. Most of those were originally new money, but as you refinance those things over time, you end up with multiple pieces of debt. We've highlighted on this page the three financings that are up for refunding today. The green is the three green rows, the Series 2010 bonds, 2011A, and the 2013 bonds. One of the themes as we walk through this is going to be that they are callable. You can pay them off on different dates. The first one you can pay off in 2020, the second you can pay off in 2021, and the third in 2023. Because of a change in tax law in 2017, you can no longer advance refund, which is when you refinance something before it can be paid off. You're no longer allowed to do that with tax-exempt bonds, but you still can get to them in a low interest rate environment, and you accomplish what's called a forward refunding. I'll explain that in greater detail in a minute. But after meeting with staff, we submitted we prepared an RFP and sent it out to banks and underwriters. Received 5 proposals. The most favorable proposal to the agency was submitted by Bank of America, and I believe Coleman, Cordell, and Doug are here today. Doug Draper are here today from Bank of America. We've worked with them, staff, and bond counsel to finalize the documents for the financing that's what's before you today. Just a little bit of a picture here on what a forward refinancing is. If you think about it like a mortgage on your house, typically when you fill out your application, you have the opportunity to lock in the interest rate that day, and you might close 2 or 3 months later. Essentially, that's what a forward refinancing is in what you're doing today. Since the bonds can't be advance refunded, you actually have to wait to close later this year in 2020, then again in 2021 and 2023. And so what this graphic shows is you're really signing up the papers, just like putting your application in on a mortgage today. That's what the green bar is. And then the actual closings occur in the future. The rate is locked in today. The numbers are all set. And so as you can see on the dates on the bottom of the page, it's one financing, but there's 3 separate pieces of it. Just to give you what you really care about, the financing, we've divided it up into each of the 3 pieces. The first financing is very small. It's only about $6 million. The savings is about $500,000. And by the way, when I say savings, that's net of all costs. So all costs are already deducted. The second financing is about $45 million, and it has $2 million of savings. The largest of the financings is $75 million, and there's almost $20 million of savings. So the total is $22 million. That's present value. You get that over time, and I won't go into all the minutiae on this page, but the column in the table shows you how much your annual debt service declines each year for the rest of these financings. Since only one takes place right now, there's not much savings in the first year, but as you move through time and all 3 of the financings are put in place, the savings steps up. I want to make a couple of points. No debt is extended. It mirrors the exact debt service you currently have. And so you get this savings precisely because the rate has already been locked in for the life of the financings. As far as timing, we are mostly done. Of course, we'd like to be approved today. The forward delivery agreement will be signed either late this afternoon or tomorrow. And then as we get to the actual call date for each bond, there will be a separate gathering, a separate closing to put in place all the specific details for each financing. I think Tom needs to come up. Tom from Neighbors Giblin Nickerson, your bond counsel is going to finish the presentation.
Thank you, David. Tom Giblin with Neighbors Giblin and Nickerson. We serve as bond counsel to the authority. The slide you have right now is the parameters. Whenever we do a bond issue, we lay out parameters that you're looking for as a board to be achieved before any purchase contract is signed with the underwriters. So the parameters we're looking for, and this is over a 3-year period, is that you do not issue more than $135 million of bonds. In truth, it's going to be less than 130. The true interest cost, which includes all costs of issuance, can't exceed 3.50. The TIC, the true interest cost, is going to be 231. Final maturity date can't go past October 1 of 38. That's the final maturity date. Most importantly, the net present savings has to be at least 3%. In fact, it's going to be 17.2 once we complete the transaction in 2023. So the legal document we have before you, which is 2020-001, the resolution, basically has contained in all the documents, all the pertinent information needed to complete this transaction. If you adopt the resolution today, that's it. That's the only action this board has to take. There is a forward delivery agreement attached to the document, to the resolution. Once that's signed by the authority, then everything else falls into place. So as David mentioned earlier, we'll have one drawdown to refund the 2010 bonds in July to September, in that range this year. Next year, same thing. And then 2023, we'll complete the transaction. And in October of that year, we would have the third drawdown on this bond, and that would wrap it up. So if you want to proceed with the transaction, the action would be to adopt the resolution. Once that's done, we will ask the appropriate officials to go ahead and sign some documents after the meeting's over, and that should do it. Any questions?
Well, that was a lot of information. Very good. Yes, Councilwoman Rice.
Thank you, Chair. Great report. Thank you. I'm just curious, some of the other outstanding bonds we have, for instance, there's a series 2015A for $180 million. At what point would we maybe consider refinancing some of these other bonds as well?
A good question. Yeah, we monitor that all the time. And the call date for those bonds is too far from today for the math to work out. So we most likely be a couple of years from now, but we monitor that as we were talking earlier. We work with Christine and her staff at all times to keep an eye on them. That would be the next one that would come up. Some of the others are less likely to get refinanced just because they've already been, most of this, the existing debt has already been refinanced down to low rates.
Okay, thank you.
Questions further? Okay.
Do we need a motion?
We need a motion to approve the resolution.
I make the motion to approve the resolution.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the resolution. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Like sign opposed?
Just after.
Okay, show that pass.
Yes, I just want to add my voice to thanks for job well done, and thanks for watching out for our finances so carefully.
Absolutely. Okay, we are now in old business, and Commissioner Eggers, you would like to start member government reports. I put this on the agenda so you can explain that further, and that there would be some clarity to the member governments of exactly what kind of materials you're asking for when they make their presentations.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, really, just in talking to a number of different folks that are stakeholders that are involved in Tampa Bay Water, I think it would just be a good opportunity for each of the member governments. They have really dedicated professionals, all of them in their own utility departments, to have a presentation here. You know, I could envision it almost being another set of tables here for that meeting. Just each meeting have one of our member governments come forward and talk about the state of water in their own jurisdiction, wherever they are. Tell us a little bit about what's going on, some of your concerns within your own operation, but more importantly, how it communicates or how the relevance to Tampa Bay Water. Almost a SWOT analysis. I'm sure you all do them. They're all probably already in place so that we really don't have to, we're not creating a lot of new work. It's just a way for you all to have direct communication with us, tell us what's going on, and any maybe direct concerns or thoughts that you may have as to continue to improve the relationship with the Tampa Bay Water. So that's really the essence of it, and I would envision one member each meeting coming forward, spending maybe 15, 20 minutes on their presentation, and then opening it up for conversation if they choose. That's all. Thank you.
Any comments, Commissioner Smith?
I love this idea. I think it would be great, informative for all of us, and help us see how all the pieces fit together. So if you want to make a motion, I would support it. If not, if the direction is all we need, I'm very excited about it. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. And I guess we'll draw names out of a hat to see who goes first.
What's alphabetical?
I'm sure there's one or two out there that are just dying to go first.
So, okay, well, we'll just direct staff to let the member governments know when they need to come forward with their reports. I don't think so.
No, I don't think so, yeah.
Good? The board's good?
Staff take care of it.
Yeah, staff will take care of it. And
thank you, appreciate that.
And now, my final, we're going to move to election of officers. We will now turn it over to Matt Jordan. He has control of the gavel, and go for it.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I would like to open the nominations process for Chair of the Tampa Bay Water Board. Any nominations?
I move Mr. Eggers for chair.
I would second that.
Okay. Any other nominations?
I move nominations cease.
Okay. We'll declare the nominations closed and call the question. All in favor of Commissioner Eggers as chair of the Tampa Bay Water Board, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? So ordered.
Okay.
Oh. Okay.
Congratulations.
Oh, well, thank you.
Now it's all on you.
Yeah, thank you. Well, first of all, thank you for the confidence in chairing, representing you all. And really looking forward to that, working closely with staff and all the member governments as to the extent that we can. And just real quickly, I know we'll have a chance to properly thank the current chair, but just really wanted to say thank you. I mean, it's been a couple tough years that you kind of gotten us through rocky road. And seriously, I mean, I'm not saying we're out of the woods, but I really appreciate that effort for that. So I think we also today also need to select the vice chair. And so at this point, I just ask for any nominations for vice chair for Tampa Bay Water. Yes, Councilor.
Commissioner Oakley?
Second.
A second. Okay. Any other nominations? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Congratulations.
Thank you.
Commissioner Oakley.
Yep. Thank you for your confidence in me to follow our chair. So be big shoes down the road. So, and I want to thank Madam Chair for all that you've done this past 2 years. And echo what Mr. Egger said. It's been a very rocky road for you to come through, and I think you did very well, you know, at doing that. And we appreciate all that you've done here. So, thank you.
Okay. We are looking for a first board member, right, for the third member of our executive committee. That's essentially what we're doing, and it needs to be from somebody from Hillsborough County. We have Pinellas County and Pasco County represented right now. So I need a motion, or if there's some interest, a motion for the third member of our executive committee.
I nominate Commissioner Merman.
Second.
It's a motion and a second. Is there any other nominations for the board? Not seeing any other nominations, so I have a motion to close those nomination process. Motion to close? Yes?
Yes.
Yep. Second, okay. All in favor of Commissioner Merman?
Aye.
Say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Is there any other thing? Yes.
I just want to say, Commissioner Merman, you've been such a great chair this whole time, and so sunny about it and fair about letting people speak. And then as we move through a contentious issue, being able to shake it off and go to the next topic with a smile and a cheerful attitude has really been helpful. And also the fairness with which you let everyone speak and hear things out and don't try to steer it too heavily. It's just been a learning experience for me to see somebody really chair a meeting so well. And I appreciate all your work here and behind the scenes as chair.
Okay. Yeah, and we have there's an alternate position as well, and that alternate position can come from any of the member governments. And they, obviously, anybody can come to the executive meeting, but they do come and they vote in the absence of one of the other three executive committee members. So we can I can get some notes from folks in the next 60 days if you're interested in, or if you want to make a nomination today, that's fine with me. Yes, Commissioner Oakley.
I'd like to nominate Ms. Rice for that position.
All right. Do I have a second for that?
Second.
Okay. Any other interest in being the alternate to our board? Okay. So I don't hear any others.
Nomination cease.
Okay. All in favor of Councilmember Rice? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. So thank you. Appreciate that. And I think that was really it. Yes.
Just receive and file.
Yep. Do you have anything in particular, or?
No, you just had the emotion.
Yeah.
So moved.
So motion to receive and file.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any closing comments? This meeting is adjourned.
Onward.